Today, the image of the wild hair and the mischievous tongue serves as our global icon for intelligence. He is the one human being whose name has become synonymous with knowing the unknowable. But growing up in industrial Munich, he looked like a failure. He spoke so late in childhood and struggled so much with basic interactions that his own parents genuinely feared he was intellectually slow. That changed at age 5. Sick in bed, his father handed him a simple magnetic compass. He turned it and shook it, but the needle always snapped back to north. Something invisible, moving right through empty space, was pulling it. This small compass gave him his first glimpse into a hidden world. It taught him that what we see on the surface, the solid objects and the empty air, is driven by invisible forces that most people never think to look for. As he grew older, he clashed violently with the German education system. Schools at the time operated like military camps. Teachers demanded blind obedience and rote memorization, punishing anyone who asked questions. At 15, he couldn't take the dictatorial environment anymore. He convinced a doctor to write a fake medical certificate for a nervous breakdown, dropped out of high school completely, and fled to Italy, eventually renouncing his German citizenship to avoid military service. When he tried to get his life back on track at the Swiss Federal Polytechnic, the future greatest mind in physics actually failed his college entrance exam. He bombed the botany, French, and history sections. Even after he eventually graduated, his professors refused to give him a recommendation, leaving him blacklisted from academic jobs. By every standard metric of his society, he was a total failure, a high school dropout with no country and no prospects. Pushed out of that rigid academic cage, his rebellious mind was now completely free to wander. With no university willing to hire him, he took a job as a third-class clerk in the Swiss patent office in Bern. The brightest mind of the century was sitting at a wooden desk, 8 hours a day, reviewing mundane paperwork. Curious was rapidly expanding its railway networks, and towns needed to synchronize their clocks. He spent his days reviewing patents for electrical time signals. Staring out his window, he began to wonder if a person moving at the speed of a train would experience time exactly the same way. Armed with only a pen and paper, he published 4 papers in a single year. He proved atoms exist and used light to predict the behavior of the quantum world, and wrote down E equals mc squared, turning the most basic assumptions of science upside down before his 27th birthday. He didn't have a multi-million-dollar laboratory or a telescope. He had a pen, paper, and a willingness to reject the absolute rules of the universe that tenured experts had spent centuries memorizing. This animation demonstrates his 1915 theory of general relativity, where he challenged Isaac Newton directly. Newton taught that gravity was a pulling force. Einstein argued that empty space isn't empty at all. Massive objects like the sun don't pull planets, they warp the fabric of space and time, creating curves that planets simply roll along. It sounded absurd until a total solar eclipse in 1919. British astronomers photographed starlight bending around the sun at the exact angle Einstein's math predicted. In a single night, the patent clerk became a global icon, but he never forgot what it meant to be an outsider. When an unknown Indian physicist named S.N. Bose had his paper rejected by British journals, Einstein translated it himself and got it published. Later, he invited the philosopher Rabindranath Tagore to his home, engaging in deep debates about whether truth could exist independent of human consciousness. He recognized that rigid academic structures often suffocated true discovery. Breaking the rules of the universe required opening your mind to entirely different ways of perceiving reality. By the 1930s, the political climate in Germany had turned fatal. The Nazi Party was rapidly gaining power, and as the world's most famous Jewish intellectual and a vocal pacifist, Einstein became a prime target. His life's work was burned in the streets. Fearing for his life, he fled his homeland permanently, seeking refuge in the United States. But the safety of America brought a terrifying realization in 1939. German scientists had successfully split the uranium atom. They were using his own equation, E equals mc squared, to develop a nuclear weapon. He hated war. He hated the military. But the thought of Adolf Hitler with an atomic bomb forced him into a corner. He abandoned his strict pacifism and wrote a warning letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, a move that inadvertently kick-started the American Manhattan Project. The beautiful mathematical harmony he had uncovered to explain the stars was now being weaponized by humanity to build a machine of mass extinction. When Hiroshima and Nagasaki were leveled by atomic bombs in 1945, the news broke him. He let out a gasp of despair. The man who wanted to understand the mind of the universe now carried the crushing moral weight of its destruction. He spent his final years at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, trying to undo the damage. He aggressively campaigned against the nuclear arms race and became a fierce advocate for civil rights, comparing the segregation he saw in America to the early days of Nazi Germany. In April 1955, an artery in his stomach ruptured. Doctors offered surgery to save him, but at 76, he refused. He told them, "It is tasteless to prolong life artificially. I have done my share. It is time to go." We see his math on chalkboards and his face on t-shirts, but the math is only half the story. His life proves that the universe hides its greatest secrets from everyone except the rebels, who dare to question the very foundation of reality.